I only remember a few specifics from my first few weeks in the classroom. I had big ideas, but the execution was definitely messy. I remember trying to keep track of things that worked and didn't in those first few months, and the second category was certainly larger than the first. I remember the first time I gave the students a math problem that asked that they apply an understanding of place value. Within 10 minutes, 3 children were crying because they didn't understand and were afraid to get the wrong answer. Somehow I hadn't anticipated that my 50 students from all over the city would have such varying experiences and attitudes toward learning. I was so thankful to be partnered with Amy Park, an incredible teacher and leader in inquiry-based practice. It was her early perspective and support during our team planning blocks that quickly became a lifeline. It was evident that my thinking was always amplified through conversation with Amy, and a lot more seems possible when someone's always got your back. A pivotal moment in those early conversations came from the acknowledgement that a majority of students seemed to be struggling with anything beyond simple computation in mathematics. They kept waiting to be told what to do. As I tossed out possible learning opportunities, I remember Amy asking the question, are we telling students what to think, or are we teaching them how to think? We realized these 9-year-olds needed an opportunity to practice thinking. We needed to start by talking about the art of having a thoughtful opinion and being open with it. 2 weeks into the year, we decided to team up. We gathered all 50 students in an open space in the school and asked them to share conjectures about how they might define a multiple of 1. Hesitantly at first, we heard any number with a 1 in it, every second number, every number that ends in a 1. But as they saw their ideas considered and supported, momentum for participating in the conversation grew. Partial agreements about some conjectures led to conversations about whole numbers. The kids debated whether 0 and negative numbers could be considered multiples. We looked at whether 2 non-identical conjectures could mean the same thing and both be completely correct. I learned more about mathematics and teaching that day than I could have imagined. I thought we'd have breezed through multiples of 1. We didn't even get past it. But what a waste it would have been to prescribe a definition and miss the magic of abstract discussion and debate among 9-year-olds. How could we presume to know what they understood? How would they know that they did, unless we allowed them to debate, to defend, and to support their ideas? I started my year with the expectation that my role was to help students understand exactly what it was I wanted them to know. My goal was to track their progress and ensure they were headed in the right direction. Unknowingly, I had intended to replicate my thinking in my students without ever having asked for theirs. That day in math, I learned that even as a teacher, in a position in which I have theoretically earned the right to assume my expertise should direct the learning, inviting students to contribute blew my narrow perspective wide open. As our year progressed, providing opportunity for students to engage in conversation and to push each other's thinking continued. Our classes often combined to share their ideas, and we found ourselves pushing desks and chairs out of the way on a regular basis. Conversations were always better when students weren't at their desks. So some old mats discovered in the gymnasium hallway were appropriated for class-wide congresses. We also found that students grew increasingly competent in advocating for different workspaces. They were constantly moving back and forth between classes or pulling out the mats and lying on their bellies to discuss latest discoveries. It was sometime not long after that I came across an article written by a university prof. He'd moved his classes to a nearby coffee shop in order to encourage his students to engage more readily in conversation and debate. He discussed the limitation of a desk-based classroom culture and the ease with which moving to a less formal space shifted the attitudes of his students. When we brought it up with our students, they quite willingly shared their ideas for how we might redesign our classroom space. The result was a unanimous vote in favor of completely converting one of our classrooms to a cafe, while keeping the other for what they wanted to call the university, a space for more quiet, focused, individual thinking and writing. Our weekly blog had kept parents informed and involved in the process, and that week we had beanbag chairs, armchairs, and IKEA side tables join the gym mats in what would become affectionately known as Barclay's Cafe. The cafe and university became fixtures at our school, as the students helped us redefine what it means to be on task and engaged. It was the physical manifestation of a different kind of teacher-student relationship. People could walk in right away and not be able to identify where the teacher was because we had become so much a part of the learning that we were also cross-legged on the floor, listening to students justify their thinking. One of the best results of this change was witnessing students engage in conversation with guests to our school about the design of their workspace and the rationale behind it. I remember a teacher from a visiting school sharing that one of our students had told her that this space was different because students here were treated like their ideas mattered and could make a difference. Looking back, I have to acknowledge that there were a few pretty key pieces that contributed to the change. First and foremost, it was the students. They were willing to share their unique vision with confidence, and that made all the difference. I've also since learned that every time I forget to ask the kids, it's a mistake. Our school supports a risk-taking culture that encourages teachers to keep taking a step forward, recognizing that every time that step is in the wrong direction, that it was a valuable learning opportunity. A few months after the change, Amy and I were discussing our evolving collaborative practice with our principal, and we made a point of thanking him for letting us move all the furniture down the hall. He responded with, "To be fair, you didn't actually ask. Although you're welcome, we trust you." In a way, that confidence had the same effect on us that ours had had on students. We were empowered. This change in our classroom environment was a product of co-designing learning tasks in which students' voice had space and validity. Kids are innately curious and creative. All that is left to us is to foster an awareness of the possibilities that surround them, to let them ask questions, make decisions, and make things different. I'm Deirdre Bailey, and this is a story about bringing students into the conversation.